Today on Go Island, we are spending some time at the Nanaimo First Nations Longhouse. We're not allowed to go inside, but that doesn't mean we can't share with you what is happening in there at a Seasons of Health and Healing conference. We're going to talk more about that on today's edition of Go. Motorcycles are coming out of hibernation. May is Safety Awareness Month, retro renos, and 14 brain surgeries for a Lower Mainland girl. That and more in the next 30 minutes. The Seasons of Healing and Health Forum is organized by the Vancouver Island University and the Nanaimo First Nations, and we're going to talk with representatives from both later on this edition of Go Island. May is Motorcycle Safety Awareness Month. You're probably seeing more and more bikes out on the road these days. And Sands Funeral Chapel has organized an inaugural event to pay tribute to those who have lost their lives on a motorcycle. Here now is Kelly Robinson with more. You're watching Go Island on Shaw TV Channel 4, and today we are outside the Longhouse of the Nanaimo First Nation. We're not going inside. We're going to tell you why and how sacred it is in there with Geraldine Manson later on this edition of Go Island. But first, Dr. Carol Stewart is the Dean of Health and Human Services at Vancouver Island University. What is this forum all about?
We wanted to bring together health professionals, human service professionals, many of whom are our graduates, along with our faculty members and our students, to talk about and begin to understand more fully what it means to be healthy, what health means from an Aboriginal perspective.
And is that very different from a non-Aboriginal perspective? And I know that's a huge question.
It is a huge question. Not being Aboriginal myself,
right,
then I can't speak specifically about that. But my first job in post-secondary 28 years ago was with Blue Quills Native Education Centre in St. Paul, Alberta. And we were actually physically located in the residential school. And I came to understand very experientially at that time the difference in terms of the hurts and the nature of health and what's needed for First Nations people. And so, yes, from my experience, it is very different.
I get the sense that the conference is a mix of experiencing and healing in the now, but also building the bridges and blocks to move forward. So some of it is going to be very emotional and very now, and other is more planning and looking forward and discussing. Am I getting a good sense of that?
That's right. So what we wanted people to do was to experience the elders, experience Aboriginal healers, both talking about and receiving healing from those perspectives. So all of our presenters are First Nations people from a variety of different nations locally.
Another huge question in a very short amount of time, because the topic is always fascinating to me. There's so much healing that has to happen, and that has to happen before we can move forward and understand each other's cultures in a productive and positive way for everybody involved. How long is it going to take to get there? How is it doable? Will we ever be there? Are we there now?
I don't think we're there yet,
right.
Kate, but you know, the elders talk about it takes whatever time it takes to get there. And so it's not so much that we have to be somewhere first before we can go forward. It's that the understanding, the glimpses into the culture that we're experiencing today and to the protocol and the ceremony are just touches to begin that process.
And it's not necessarily a linear process.
That's right.
I guess is what you're saying.
That's right.
Carol, thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to talk again later on this edition of Go Island with Dr. Carol Stewart. It's time now, though, to maybe lighten up a little bit. Derek Johnstone paid a visit to an old building in Nanaimo that is getting restored to its retro original in the 1940s style gas station. Still ahead, what's on your bucket list? James Green hits the streets of Victoria to find out, and a young girl overcoming more than most of us could imagine having to endure. That and more still ahead today on Go Island. You're watching Go Island on Shaw TV Channel 4, and today we are standing outside the Longhouse of the Nanaimo First Nations. We're going to talk very shortly with Geraldine Manson about the sacred place that the Longhouse is, what happens inside. We're unfortunately not able to go in today, but we're going to tell you why. And one of the things that has been being discussed inside is the effects of residential schools and colonization, and reading some of the excerpts that are on that board has made me shiver when you put it in context of your own family, something that I think we don't do enough as a non-First Nations culture in empathizing, trying to get empathy for the First Nations and some understanding, and that's what today is all about. We're going to throw things down to Victoria now. James Green recently lost his grandfather, and he is reflecting now on whether his grandfather achieved everything that he wanted to in his lifetime. You are watching Go Island on Shaw TV Channel 4. Geraldine Manson is the elder in residence at Vancouver Island University, and she plays many other roles in the community with the Nanaimo First Nations. We've talked a lot about the Longhouse already today. That's where the Seasons of Health and Healing Forum is being held. And you know that it's killing me that I can't go inside, that we can't bring our viewers and the camera inside. What is so sacred that happens, and how is a Longhouse perceived in the First Nations culture?
As it was spoken on the floor yesterday to our two elder speakers, our Longhouse is sacred. And the question came from one of the participants, why? Our Longhouse, in the ceremonies that we do on our floor in our house is very sacred. Ceremonies are invited. If you were to ask to go into with a camera such as this one to go into our house, you would have to be asked. Camera wouldn't be able to go into our house. Topics of sacredness, cameras are not allowed into the house.
And why does that interrupt? Is it felt? And whether I agree or not is irrelevant, but does it interrupt the process that is taking
The harmony of the topics, the fire is sacred, the
Right.
words are sacred. The house, the floor is all sacred. Our ancestors are in there. We would be harshly spoken to. We would be put in our place. We would be spoken to very harshly.
You referred to earlier explaining opening the doors and going in. Even just the opening of the doors is significant. How so?
The opening of the doors, the two doors you see here, it's opening the door. The house is the womb
of the mother.
of mother.
This far in the conference has been very emotional,
Very
and people were
emotional.
coming out with tears.
Crying. Yes, yes.
Why is it so emotional?
Because it's going back into, we are speaking of the history of our culture, our customs, of who we are, the loss to residential school, to colonization, through why our elders in their time some chose to walk away from that culture.
What do we, a collective we, need to do as a society to break down barriers?
Understand, they become more involved in when we host and begin educating, having more workshops like this. Like Carol, like VIU is now opening the doors of inviting us, knocking on our door. We would like to invite you to participate, to share wisdom that you hold. Like when we got up on the floor and to say, I hold something dear, but it's not for me to say, I want to be a speaker. I want to share what I hold. No. You need to come and ask. I would like to know what.
Invitation is very important both ways.
Yes.
To be invited to come in and to be invited to speak as well. Geraldine, thank you for sharing
Thank
today.
you.
I need to spend hours and hours with this woman, and I always say that every time I get to have a chance to converse with Geraldine Manson. We'll be back with more on this edition of Go Island. Here now, though, is your Get Up and Go calendar. You're watching Go Island on Shaw TV Channel 4, and today we're talking about seasons, health and healing. It's a forum put on by Vancouver Island University and the Nanaimo First Nations. It's been 2 days of conversation, discussion, dialogue, experiential learning. You experience what you're learning in the moment, and it begs the question, what next? What do we do with all of this learning and sharing that's taken place? Dr. Carol Stewart is the Dean of Health and Human Services at VIU. What is next?
What is next?
Where do we take this information?
Yeah, so I think each and every person that has attended today will take what they've learned and go out and be more aware of how they need to work in a health setting or in a human service setting with people of First Nations background. They will have a wide variety of Aboriginal perspectives on what they've learned because we've had a wide variety of speakers. And they will create additional events that will share that knowledge and bring together the different perspectives that are there, whether it's a variety of First Nations perspectives or non-First Nations perspectives. That's the obligation that we have. When I brought the steering committee together to start to put this event together, after a couple of meetings as we started to talk about it, and the suggestion was made to hold it here, and Geraldine agreed to do that with the Tsunamic Big House. Very shortly after that, they started talking about this being the first event. And I think it is the first event, and so we will create additional events specific to health and healing. And of course, VIU is very involved in the truth and reconciliation movements right now. We have a number of events happening in the community around that. That's all part of the healing on a community perspective.
Carol, thank you.
Yeah.
The Countdown to the World of Smiles telethon is now underway. It's a fundraiser for the BC Children's Hospital. We're going to introduce you now to a young girl who's been through an awful lot already. Meet Taylin McGill. The World of Smiles telethon takes place on Sunday, May the 26th. It's a major fundraiser for the BC Children's Hospital, and you can catch it right here on Shaw TV from 5 until 11 p.m. on May the 26th. That brings us to the end of this edition of Go Island. Thank you to the organizers of the Seasons for Health and Healing here at the Nanaimo Longhouse, Geraldine Manson and Dr. Carol Stewart. Fantastic interviews, and thank you for helping us to understand. Thanks for watching this edition of Go Island. We'll see you next time.